Have you ever picked up someone's phone for just a second and wished you never had? I have. For years, I told myself that trust was the foundation of our family. I believed that love meant giving people space, respecting their privacy, and believing the best about them. My son had never given me a reason to doubt him until one ordinary Tuesday evening. What I found on Adam's phone didn't just change the way I saw my son. It changed the way I saw myself. It changed my marriage. It changed my faith. Most importantly, it became the moment God began rebuilding a family I thought was beyond saving. My name is Sandy. I'm 40 years old, and I live on the northwest side of Chicago. If you've ever driven through our neighborhood in late October, you'll know exactly what it's like. The maple trees turn brilliant shades of orange and red, children race home before the streetlights come on, and every house seems to carry years of memories tucked inside its walls. Ours was no different. From the outside, we looked like an ordinary American family. We attended church almost every Sunday. We hosted neighborhood barbecues every summer. We celebrated birthdays, same old oak dining table my husband and I bought when we were newly married. Christmas mornings were loud, joyful, and full of wrapping paper scattered across the living room floor. People often told us we had a beautiful family. Sometimes I smiled and agreed. Sometimes I wondered if they could somehow see the cracks hiding beneath the paint. I've been married to my husband Daniel for 18 years. Marriage isn't easy. Any married couple will tell you that. But we'd survived job losses, medical bills, the chaos of raising a child, and the everyday pressures that quietly wear down even the strongest relationships. Or at least I thought we had. Daniel worked long hours as an electrician. I worked part-time at our local public library. I loved helping children discover books, recommending novels to retirees, and watching teenagers reluctantly check out books they secretly ended up loving. Life wasn't glamorous. It was ordinary. Looking back now, I realize ordinary can be one of God's greatest blessings. But we rarely notice blessings until they're interrupted. Our son Adam was 16. If you have teenagers, you probably know what that age is like. One week they're laughing with you in the kitchen. The next week they're locked in their room, answering every question with one word. Fine. None. Nothing. I'm tired. I tried not to take it personally. Everyone told me it was normal. He's growing up, my friends would say. Give him space. So I did. Adam had always been a gentle kid. When he was 5, he cried because he accidentally stepped on a snail after the rain. When he was 8, he insisted we buy 2 extra blankets during winter because he worried homeless people might be cold. When he was 12, he spent almost every Saturday helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries into her apartment. He wasn't perfect, but he had a soft heart. That's why the changes caught me off guard. It started gradually. He stopped eating dinner with us. He wore hoodies even when the weather wasn't cold. His grades slipped. His laughter disappeared. Whenever I knocked on his bedroom door, there would be a long pause before he answered. Come in. Sometimes I caught him wiping his face before opening the door. Other times he looked exhausted, as though he hadn't slept in days. Everything okay? I'd ask. Yeah. You sure? I'm fine, Mom. I wanted to believe him, because believing him was easier than imagining something was wrong. Daniel wasn't nearly as concerned. He's 16, he would say while watching baseball after work. I was moody too. Don't overthink everything. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was worrying too much. Still, a mother's heart notices things that statistics can't explain. I began praying more than usual, not dramatic prayers, just quiet whispers while washing dishes. Lord, please protect my son. Help him if he's hurting. Show me if I'm missing something. I didn't hear any answers, at least not then. Church had always been part of our lives. We weren't perfect Christians. Sometimes we'd miss a Sunday because someone had the flu or because life simply became overwhelming. But faith had always been woven into our family. Every Thanksgiving, we'd thank God before eating. Every Christmas Eve, we'd read the story of Jesus' birth before opening presents. When Adam was little, he'd ask endless questions about heaven. Do dogs go there? Will Jesus know my name? Can Grandpa see us? Those conversations now felt like memories from another lifetime. Lately, Adam barely wanted to attend church. I'm staying home. Why? I'm tired. You were up until 2 in the morning again, weren't you? It's not a big deal. Daniel usually shrugged. Leave him alone. So I did, or at least I tried. Then came the school meeting. Every parent dreads those unexpected phone calls. Mrs. Carter? Yes. This is Lincoln High School. We'd appreciate it if you could come in tomorrow morning regarding Adam. My stomach tightened instantly. Is he okay? He's safe. Safe. That word should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me. The principal and one of Adam's teachers sat across from Daniel and me in a small office that smelled faintly of coffee and printer paper. They weren't angry. That somehow made it worse. Adam has become very withdrawn, his English teacher explained gently. He used to participate in discussions. Now he barely speaks. We're also concerned because he's missed several assignments. I looked at Daniel. He looked just as confused. We had no idea, I admitted. The principal folded his hands. We're not accusing him of anything. We're simply concerned. Sometimes students carry burdens adults never notice. That sentence followed me home like a shadow. Students carry burdens adults never notice. Was I missing something obvious? Had I been so busy managing schedules, bills, grocery lists, and laundry that I'd stopped seeing my own child? That afternoon, I stood outside Adam's bedroom door for several minutes before knocking. Yeah? I walked inside. His room was unusually clean, almost too clean. His desk was organized. His bed was made. His curtains were closed even though sunlight poured outside. I sat on the edge of his bed. You can tell me anything. I know. Are kids bothering you at school? No. Are you depressed? No. Are you angry with me? He finally looked at me. For just a second, I thought he was about to cry. Instead, he forced a smile. I'm okay, Mom. I promise. Sometimes the saddest words a hurting person says are, I promise, because they're often trying to protect the people they love. I hugged him. He hugged me back. But something about that hug felt different. It felt like he was saying goodbye to something. I just didn't know what. The following week passed quietly, too quietly. Then Tuesday arrived. It was cold enough that everyone rushed indoors after work and school. Daniel called to say he'd be working late on an emergency electrical repair. Adam came home, mumbled hello, and disappeared upstairs. I made tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Neither of us had much appetite. Around 8 o'clock, Adam came downstairs looking pale. Mom, can I take a shower? Of course. As he hurried toward the bathroom, his phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen counter. He had forgotten it. I glanced at the screen without thinking. One message appeared. Did your mom find out yet? My heart skipped. Another message arrived seconds later. You can't keep hiding this forever. I froze. There are moments in life when time seems to stop. The soup simmering on the stove, the sound of running water upstairs, the vibration of that phone against the countertop. Everything else faded away. I stared at the glowing screen, praying there had to be an innocent explanation. Then another notification appeared. This time it wasn't a text. It was a photo. A photo that made my hands begin to shake before I had even opened the phone. And for the first time in my life, I found myself wondering whether I should unlock my own son's phone or walk away and pretend I'd never seen any of it. I stood in my kitchen with Adam's phone in my hands, listening to the shower running upstairs. Steam drifted beneath the bathroom door. The tomato soup continued bubbling on the stove. Everything looked completely normal, yet nothing felt normal anymore. The screen lit up again. Another message. Unknown number. Please tell me you're going to tell her tonight. I stared at those words until they blurred. Tell me what? My first instinct was to put the phone back exactly where Adam had left it. Privacy mattered. Daniel and I had always agreed that trust was something you protected, especially with teenagers, but another thought fought its way into my heart. What if this wasn't about privacy? What if this was about protecting my son? I whispered the shortest prayer I've ever prayed. Lord, help me do the right thing. There was no booming voice from heaven, no miraculous sign, only a deep feeling that I couldn't ignore what was right in front of me. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone. Adam had never hidden his passcode from us when he was younger. Every birthday he changed it. I hadn't paid attention in years. I tried his birthday. Nothing. Mine. Nothing. Daniel's. Nothing. I sighed. Maybe that was God's way of telling me to stop. I carefully placed the phone back onto the counter. Then another notification appeared. This time the message preview showed only 3 words. He's getting worse. My chest tightened. Getting worse? Was Adam sick? Was someone threatening him? Had he gotten involved with drugs? 100 terrifying possibilities raced through my mind. Just then, I heard the shower turn off. I quickly stepped away from the counter and stirred the soup as if nothing had happened. Adam came downstairs a few minutes later, wearing fresh clothes. His hair was still wet. He picked up his phone. The moment he saw the notifications, the color drained from his face. He looked terrified. Not guilty, terrified. There is a difference. A guilty person usually worries about getting caught. A frightened person worries about someone else getting hurt. I noticed that immediately. "You okay?" I asked as casually as I could. He looked up too quickly. "Yeah, you look pale." "I'm just tired." He shoved the phone into his hoodie pocket so fast it almost slipped from his hands. "I think I'm going to bed." "You didn't eat." "I'm not hungry." Before I could answer, he disappeared upstairs. I stood there staring at the staircase. Something was terribly wrong. Later that night, Daniel finally came home. He looked exhausted. I waited until Adam's bedroom light went off before telling him everything. "The phone?" "Yes." "The messages scared me." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Sandy, I know what you're thinking." "No, you don't. I think you're letting your imagination run wild. You didn't see his face." He looked frightened. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know. I just know something isn't right." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We'll talk to him tomorrow, but promise me something." "What?" "Don't accuse him of anything." I nodded. "I won't." Neither of us slept much that night. I kept remembering Adam as a little boy. When thunderstorms frightened him, he'd climb into our bed carrying his dinosaur blanket. He would whisper, "Mom, can God hear the rain?" I'd smile. "God made the rain? Then he isn't scared?" "No. Can I sleep here anyway?" I would wrap my arms around him until morning. Somewhere along the way had disappeared behind a locked bedroom door. The next morning, Adam left early for school before either of us was fully awake. He barely touched his breakfast towel. "Love you," I called as he headed toward the door. He hesitated, then smiled weakly. "Love you too." For some reason, those words broke my heart. At work, I couldn't focus. I checked out books, returned phone calls, helped children find picture books. But my mind stayed with Adam. Around lunchtime, my friend Melissa noticed something was wrong. "You look exhausted." I didn't sleep. She handed me a cup of coffee. "Teenager problems?" I laughed quietly. "I wish I knew." She listened as I carefully explained everything except the phone messages. When I finished, she asked one question. "Have you prayed about it?" "I have." "What do you feel God is telling you?" I looked down at my coffee. "I honestly don't know." Melissa smiled gently. "Sometimes God doesn't give us the whole answer. Sometimes he just gives us enough light for the next step." Those words stayed with me all afternoon. Enough light for the next step. Not the whole staircase, just the next step. That evening, I decided to clean the upstairs hallway while Adam was at youth basketball practice. His bedroom door was open. I wasn't planning to snoop. Honestly, I wasn't. I simply noticed something lying halfway underneath his bed, a spiral notebook. As I bent down to pick it up, I saw dozens of crumpled papers pushed farther underneath. I pulled one out. It wasn't homework, it was a drawing, a charcoal sketch. It showed a young boy sitting alone inside a church sanctuary. The sunlight poured through stained glass windows. The boy's head was buried in his hands. Across the bottom were written 6 simple words. "God, why won't you answer me?" I froze. Adam had always enjoyed drawing. I hadn't realized he was this talented, or this heartbroken. I looked at another page, then another. Every drawing carried the same feeling: loneliness, fear, silence. One picture showed Jesus standing outside a closed bedroom door. Another showed a teenage boy drowning, while dozens of people walked past without noticing. Another simply showed folded hands with tears falling between the fingers. I sat on the floor, my eyes filled with tears. How long had my son been carrying this? Why hadn't I seen it? Then I heard the garage door opening. Adam was home. I quickly placed everything exactly where I'd found it and stepped back into the hallway. He walked upstairs looking exhausted. "Practice, okay?" He shrugged. It was fine. His smile lasted barely a second. Then he disappeared into his room. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those drawings. Who was the drowning boy? Why did every picture seem filled with hopelessness? And why did they all point toward God? Friday afternoon, everything changed again. My phone rang while I was shelving books. The caller ID showed Lincoln High School. Immediately, my stomach dropped. "This is Sandy." "Mrs. Carter, this is the school counselor. Adam left campus during lunch today. We found him about an hour later sitting alone at St. Matthew's Church." I blinked. He skipped school to go to church? Yes, he wasn't causing trouble. He was simply sitting inside the sanctuary. He told Father Michael he needed somewhere quiet. Tears filled my eyes. What happened? The counselor hesitated before answering. He wouldn't tell us. "But Mrs. Carter, your son seems to be carrying an incredible amount of emotional weight. I think he needs help." That evening, Daniel and I sat across from Adam in the living room. No television, no phones, no distractions. I took a slow breath. "We're worried about you." "I'm okay." "No," Daniel said gently. "You're not." Adam looked down at the floor. "We got a call from school." "I know. You went to church." His voice cracked. "I needed somewhere quiet." Nobody spoke. Finally, I asked softly, "Adam, what are you so afraid of?" His eyes immediately filled with tears. For a moment, I thought he was finally going to tell us everything. Instead, he stood up. "I'm sorry. I can't." He hurried upstairs before either of us could stop him. A second later, his bedroom door locked. Daniel sighed deeply. "This is bigger than teenage mood swings," I nodded. "Much bigger." Neither of us realized that upstairs, Adam wasn't trying to hide from us. He was staring at another message on his phone, one that simply read, "You have until Sunday. If you don't tell your parents, I will." And as Adam read those words, he buried his face in his hands and whispered a desperate prayer he wasn't even sure God could hear. "Please, don't let my family fall apart." Sunday mornings had always been my favorite. There was something comforting about the rhythm of them, the smell of coffee filling the kitchen, Daniel humming old worship songs while shaving, Adam complaining that church started too early. It wasn't perfect. It was familiar. But that Sunday felt different from the moment I opened my eyes. The house was unusually quiet. I glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. Normally, Adam would still be asleep, but when I walked past his bedroom, his door was already open. The bed was neatly made. He was gone. My heart began pounding. "Daniel," I called. Within seconds, he came running from our bedroom. "What happened?" "Adam isn't here." We searched the entire house, the backyard, the garage, nothing. Then Daniel noticed a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. It simply read, "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I just need to think. I'll be back before church. Please don't worry." Of course we worried. For the next 45 minutes, I called his phone over and over, straight to voicemail. Daniel drove around the neighborhood while I stayed home in case Adam returned. I couldn't sit still. I walked from window to window, praying under my breath, Lord, please protect my son. Whatever he's facing, don't let him face it alone." At 8:03 a.m., my phone rang. It was Father Michael from St. Matthew's Church. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes. I think Adam is here." Relief washed over me so suddenly that my knees nearly gave out. "We're coming." When Daniel and I arrived, Father Michael met us at the sanctuary doors. He spoke quietly. He's been here since before sunrise. He hasn't said much. Just be gentle. The church was almost empty. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, filling the sanctuary with colors that danced across the wooden pews. Adam was sitting alone in the third row. His Bible lay open on his lap. His shoulders were slumped. For a moment, he looked less like a 16-year-old boy and more like a little child who had gotten lost. I slowly sat beside him. He didn't look up. "I was scared," I whispered. "I'm sorry." His voice was barely audible. Daniel sat on Adam's other side. "We're not angry. We just want to understand." Adam stared at the cross above the altar for a long time. Then he quietly asked a question that caught both of us off guard. "Do you think God ever gets tired of forgiving people?" I felt tears sting my eyes. "No." "Why would you ask that?" He swallowed hard. "Because I think I've disappointed him." Before either of us could answer, Father Michael gently approached. "If it's all right with all of you," he said, "I'd like to share something." We nodded. He sat across the aisle, giving Adam space. When Adam came here Friday, he asked me something similar. I looked at my son in surprise. "You talked to Father Michael?" Adam nodded without meeting my eyes. Father Michael continued. He asked if someone could make a mistake so terrible that God would stop loving them. Silence filled the sanctuary. Then Father Michael opened his Bible. He didn't preach, he simply read. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. He closed the Bible gently. Adam, broken hearts are exactly the kind of hearts Jesus came for. Adam's lips trembled. I want to believe that. You don't have to earn his love. You never could. For the first time in weeks, I saw Adam cry openly. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears rolling down his face. I wrapped my arm around him. I don't care what happened. We'll face it together. He leaned against me the way he used to when he was little. For a few minutes, none of us spoke. After church, we drove home together. The silence in the car wasn't uncomfortable. It felt fragile, like all of us were waiting for something. That afternoon, Adam stayed in his room. Daniel went outside to mow the lawn. I was folding laundry when the doorbell rang. Standing on the porch was a teenage girl I had never seen before. She looked nervous. Is Adam home? May I ask, who's asking? My name is Emily. She couldn't have been older than 16. She held her backpack tightly against her chest. I really need to talk to him. Something in her expression reminded me of Adam. The same exhaustion, the same fear. I'll get him. When Adam came downstairs and saw Emily standing there, his face went completely pale. You shouldn't have come. I had to. They looked at each other for several seconds without speaking. Finally, I stepped back. Why don't you both come inside? They sat at the dining room table. Neither touched the lemonade I offered. Daniel quietly joined us from outside. Emily looked at Adam. I can't keep lying. Adam closed his eyes. I know. She turned toward us. I'm sorry. I never wanted to come between your family. My heart began racing. Come between our family? What did that mean? Emily reached into her backpack and pulled out a small notebook. She handed it to Adam. You should show them. His hands shook as he held it. I can't. You have to. The room became unbearably quiet. Finally, Adam looked at me. Real fear filled his eyes. Mom? I've been hiding something. I reached across the table and took his hand. Whatever it is, I love you. Nothing changes that. He nodded slowly. Then he opened the notebook. Instead of words, it was filled with sketches. His sketches. The same drawings I had found under his bed. Only there were dozens more. Some were even darker. One showed a teenager standing on the edge of a bridge. Another showed a bedroom surrounded by shadows. One page simply read, I don't want to feel like this anymore. My heart shattered. I looked at Adam. Sweetheart, his voice cracked. I've been pretending everything was okay. It wasn't. I've been depressed. The word seemed to echo through the room. Depressed. Daniel's face fell. I couldn't speak. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you'd think I was weak. Tears streamed down Emily's face. I told him he needed to tell someone. He wouldn't. So I started sending those messages. I looked at her. You, she nodded. I'm the one who texted him. I wasn't trying to scare you. I didn't know what else to do. Suddenly everything made sense. The mysterious texts. You have until Sunday. Tell your parents. I wasn't threatening him, Emily whispered. I was begging him. Adam covered his face. I promised her I'd tell you. I kept losing my courage. Daniel moved his chair closer. He placed a hand on Adam's shoulder. Son? Why didn't you come to us? Adam looked at both of us with tears in his eyes. Because I thought Christians aren't supposed to feel this way. I thought if I was really close to God, I wouldn't be so broken. The room fell silent. Those words cut deeper than anything else he had said. How had our son come to believe that his pain made him a failure? How long had he been carrying that burden alone? Emily quietly wiped away her tears. He helped me last year when my parents divorced. He stayed with me when everyone else walked away. But lately, he became the one who needed help, and I was afraid I was going to lose my best friend. I reached across the table and held Adam's face in my hands. Listen to me. Jesus never said his followers would never struggle. He promised he would never leave us in our struggles. Adam began sobbing, real, uncontrollable sobs. Years of fear seemed to pour out of him all at once. I held him like I had when he was a little boy, frightened by thunderstorms. Daniel embraced both of us. Emily quietly cried across the table. For the first time in months, the truth had finally entered our home. But none of us knew that this confession was only the beginning, because later that night, after Adam finally fell asleep, I opened his sketchbook one more time. Tucked inside the back cover was a folded letter. It wasn't addressed to Emily. It wasn't addressed to us. Across the front, in Adam's handwriting, were 3 heartbreaking words. To be read. If I'm gone. I couldn't stop staring at the folded letter. The words written across the front seemed to burn into my heart. To be read. If I'm gone. My hands began to shake. For several long seconds, I simply stood in the hallway outside Adam's bedroom. Inside, I could hear the faint sound of his breathing. He had finally fallen asleep after hours of crying. Daniel walked quietly toward me. What is it? Without speaking, I handed him the letter. The color drained from his face. Oh, God! He whispered the words more as a prayer than as a sentence. What do we do? I looked toward Adam's bedroom door. I don't know. Part of me wanted to open the letter immediately. Another part of me felt as though reading it would be stepping into the deepest pain my son had ever experienced. Daniel gently placed his hand on mine. We're his parents. If this letter tells us how to help him, we have to know, I nodded. Together we walked downstairs. Neither of us spoke as I carefully unfolded the paper. It wasn't long, only 2 handwritten pages, but every line felt heavier than the one before. Mom and Dad, if you're reading this, it means I wasn't strong enough. I'm so sorry. Please don't blame yourselves. You loved me more than I deserved. The tears came instantly. No, I whispered. No, Adam. I kept reading through blurred eyes. I know you've probably wondered why I've changed. The truth is, I don't even remember when it started. It wasn't one bad day. It was hundreds of little days where I smiled outside and felt empty inside. Daniel covered his mouth. I continued. I prayed every night. I begged God to make me normal again. When nothing changed, I started thinking maybe he was disappointed in me. Maybe I didn't have enough faith. Maybe I wasn't a real Christian. I stopped reading. My heart felt like it had been crushed. How had our son come to believe that his suffering meant God had abandoned him? Daniel wiped tears from his face. We taught him about God's love. I know. So why did he believe this? I had no answer. The letter continued. Please tell Emily thank you. She tried harder than anyone to save me. She kept telling me to tell you everything. She never gave up on me. Then came the line that completely broke me. Mom, I'm sorry you kept asking if I was okay. You always knew I was lying. I just didn't know how to tell you the truth. I buried my face in my hands. Every conversation replayed in my mind. Are you okay? I'm fine. How many times had I accepted that answer because I wanted it to be true? Daniel quietly folded the letter. We're getting him help. Tomorrow. No waiting. I nodded immediately. No waiting. For the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt urgency. The next morning, neither Daniel nor I went to work. Adam came downstairs looking surprised. Why are you both home? I took a deep breath. We need to talk. His eyes immediately dropped to the letter lying on the dining room table. You found it. I did. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry. I walked over and hugged him before he could say another word. You never have to apologize for hurting. He started crying again. I thought you'd be disappointed. Oh, sweetheart. I could never be disappointed because you needed help. I only wish you'd told us sooner. Daniel pulled out a chair. Sit with us. For nearly 2 hours we talked, really talked. Not as parents trying to fix everything, not as a teenager trying to hide everything, just as a family. Adam explained that the sadness had started almost a year earlier. At first he thought it would disappear. Then sleeping became difficult. Food lost its taste. Basketball stopped being fun. Even reading his Bible felt impossible. I'd open it, and my mind would just go blank. I felt guilty. I thought something was wrong with me. I reached across the table. There wasn't something wrong with you. You were suffering. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. I know that now. But back then, I thought Christians were supposed to be joyful all the time. Daniel leaned forward. I've believed in Jesus for most of my life. I've still had seasons where I was afraid. Faith doesn't erase every struggle. It gives us someone to hold on to during the struggle. Adam listened carefully. I realized something that morning. Our son didn't need another lecture. He needed honesty. He needed to know that even faithful people sometimes battle darkness. That afternoon, we met with Dr. Rachel Morgan, a licensed Christian counselor who had been recommended by Father Michael. I wasn't sure what to expect. Adam looked nervous. So did I. Dr. Morgan greeted us warmly. I'm glad you're here. Those simple words somehow eased the tension. She spent the first session mostly listening. She asked Adam about school, friends, sleep, prayer, art. Not once did she make him feel broken. Instead, she spoke with remarkable kindness. Toward the end of the session, she looked at Daniel and me. "I want you both to hear something." We nodded. Depression is not proof that someone lacks faith. It is not evidence that God has abandoned them. Many faithful believers throughout history experienced deep sorrow. What they needed wasn't shame. They needed compassion. I felt tears welling up again. How many people needed to hear those words? When the session ended, Adam looked exhausted. But he also looked lighter, just a little. As we walked toward the parking lot, he quietly said, "I think she understood me." I smiled through tears. I think she did. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Healing rarely happens overnight. Some mornings Adam laughed. Other mornings he barely wanted to leave his room. There were good days. There were difficult days. But one thing had changed completely. He wasn't carrying the burden alone anymore. Every evening, the three of us started eating dinner together again. Not because everything was fixed, but because we were learning to stay together even when things weren't. "Can I show you something?" He disappeared upstairs. A few minutes later, he returned carrying his sketchbook. "This one's new." He opened to a fresh drawing. This time it wasn't a boy drowning. It wasn't an empty church. It wasn't a closed door. Instead, it showed a stormy sea, a small boat, and Jesus reaching down to pull someone from the water. Across the bottom he had written, "Even when I couldn't feel his presence, he never stopped reaching for me." I couldn't speak. Neither could Daniel. Adam smiled shyly. "I think. I'm starting to believe that." I wrapped my arms around him. "So am I." For the first time in many months, hope no longer felt impossible. It felt real, small, fragile, but real. None of us realized that another conversation was still waiting. A conversation that would reveal a hidden pain Daniel had carried for years and change our family in a way none of us expected. Hope has a quiet way of entering a home. It doesn't usually arrive with fireworks or dramatic miracles. Sometimes it shows up in small moments. A teenager who comes downstairs for breakfast after hiding in his room for weeks. A father who laughs at an old family joke. A mother who sleeps through the night without waking up in fear. Those little moments became treasures in our house. Adam started meeting with Dr. Rachel Morgan every week. He continued talking with Father Michael. Emily still checked on him. But now she wasn't carrying the weight alone. She had finally told her own parents what had been happening, and they encouraged her to keep being a friend while allowing adults to take responsibility. I thanked her one afternoon. "If you hadn't kept reaching out to Adam," my voice cracked, "I don't know where we'd be." She shook her head. "I just couldn't leave him alone." I smiled through tears. "That's exactly what Jesus does for us." She smiled back. "I guess he taught me through people." As the weeks passed, I noticed something changing in Adam. Not perfection, healing. There is a difference. Some mornings were still difficult. Some nights he still struggled to sleep. But instead of hiding, he talked. Sometimes he'd knock on my bedroom door. "Mom, can we sit for a while?" We would make hot chocolate and sit at the kitchen table long after midnight. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. I learned that love doesn't always need the right words. Sometimes it just needs to stay. One evening, after Adam had gone upstairs, Daniel remained unusually quiet. He stared into his coffee for several minutes. "You've been distant," I said softly. "I'm okay." I couldn't help smiling. "You know, that answer doesn't work very well in this family anymore." He laughed quietly. Then his smile disappeared. "I've been thinking." "About what?" He took a deep breath. "About Adam." "And?" "I kept telling you he was just being a normal teenager. You were trying to reassure me." "No," he slowly shook his head. I was trying to reassure myself." I looked at him carefully. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Regret. Deep regret. He leaned back in his chair. "When I was 19, I lost my best friend very suddenly." The room became completely still. I stared at him. "You never told me. I've never told anyone." His voice sounded heavy. "As kids, we grew up together. We played baseball. We went fishing. We planned on being each other's best man someday." He looked toward the living room window. Then one morning, he was gone. My heart broke all over again. "Daniel, I thought I had buried it. But when I saw Adam falling apart, I convinced myself it couldn't be happening again. He lowered his head. I wasn't ignoring our son. I was running from my own fear. Tears filled my eyes. For 18 years of marriage, I had never known this. He continued, "My father always told me, real men don't cry. Real men deal with their problems." So I never grieved. I just kept working, kept moving, kept pretending. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I think Adam inherited more than my eyes. He inherited my silence. Those words stayed with me. Sometimes family patterns are passed down without anyone realizing it. Not because parents don't love their children, but because pain that isn't healed often echoes into the next generation. The following Sunday, Father Michael invited our family to share lunch after church. During the meal, he listened quietly as Daniel opened up about his friend for the first time. Father Michael didn't interrupt, he simply listened. When Daniel finished, Father Michael spoke gently. Grief that is ignored doesn't disappear. It waits, sometimes for years, and then it asks to be heard. Daniel nodded slowly. I think mine waited 20 years. That afternoon, on the drive home, Adam looked over at his dad. I never knew. Daniel smiled sadly. I didn't want anyone to know. Adam reached across the center console and squeezed his father's arm. I'm glad you told me. So am I. It was a small moment, but I knew something important had happened. My husband and son had stopped pretending to be strong. They had started being honest. A few days later, Dr. Viveraf Morgan suggested something unusual. I'd like each of you to write a letter. Not because someone is leaving, but because sometimes writing helps us say what speaking cannot. That evening, we each found a quiet place in the house. For nearly an hour, the only sound was the scratching of pens against paper. When we finished, we gathered in the living room. Adam volunteered to read first. He unfolded his letter with trembling hands. Dear Mom and Dad, thank you for not giving up on me after you learned the truth. I was afraid you would look at me differently. Instead, you loved me more. I know healing will take time. I know I still have difficult days, but now, when those days come, I don't have to fight them alone. By the time he finished, all three of us were crying. Daniel read next. He looked directly at Adam. Son, I spent years believing that strength meant hiding pain. You taught me something different. Real strength is asking for help before it's too late. Thank you for saving your old man. Adam stood up and hugged him before he could finish. Finally, it was my turn. I unfolded my paper, though my hands were shaking so much I could barely hold it. My precious son, for months I believed I had failed as your mother because I didn't notice how deeply you were hurting. Dr. Morgan reminded me of something I want you to remember for the rest of your life. Love doesn't mean we always notice every wound. Love means we stay when the wounds are finally revealed. I can't promise that life will never be hard again, but I can promise this. You will never have to hide your pain from me again. Not because I'm a perfect mother, but because God never asked me to be perfect. He asked me to love you. When I finished reading, Adam wrapped his arms around me just as he had when he was 5 years old. Only this time, he wasn't asking me to protect him from a thunderstorm. He was letting me walk through one with him. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I walked into the backyard. The Chicago air was cool. The sky was clear. For months, my prayers had sounded like desperate cries. God, fix this. Please save my son. But that night, my prayer was different. Thank you. Not because every problem had disappeared, not because healing was complete, but because God had answered the prayer. I didn't even know how to pray. He hadn't simply rescued Adam. He was healing all of us. As I stood there looking up at the stars, I remembered something Father Michael had said weeks earlier. Broken hearts are exactly the kind of hearts Jesus came for. For the first time, I truly understood what he meant. Still, our journey wasn't over. Healing would continue to require patience, honesty, professional support, and faith. But our family had finally stopped living behind closed doors. And because of that, the light had begun to enter places where darkness had quietly lived for far too long. It has been 3 years since I picked up Adam's phone. 3 years since a forgotten device on a kitchen counter became the beginning of the most painful and most beautiful chapter of our family's life. People often ask me, did everything go back to normal? My answer is always the same. No, because we didn't want our old normal back. Our old normal was smiling while hiding pain. Our old normal was saying, "I'm fine," even when we weren't. Our old normal was believing that silence was strength. God didn't restore our old normal. He gave us something better. He taught us to live in the light. Today, I still work at the library. Daniel still spends his days fixing electrical problems all over Chicago. Adam is now 19 years old and attending college just outside the city. He's studying graphic design. The same sketches that once revealed his deepest pain now fill sketchbooks with hope, grace, and stories of redemption. One afternoon, he invited me to his college's annual student art exhibition. I had no idea what to expect. As Daniel and I walked through the gallery, we admired paintings, photographs, and sculptures created by students from every background imaginable. Then we reached Adam's display. I immediately recognized his style. His charcoal work was even more beautiful than before. The first drawing showed a frightened teenage boy sitting alone in a dark bedroom. The second showed that same boy opening a door where light spilled into the room. The final piece stopped me in my tracks. It showed 3 people walking together beneath a stormy sky. The rain was still falling. The clouds hadn't completely disappeared. But in the distance, sunlight was breaking through. Across the bottom of the drawing were words that brought tears to my eyes. Healing doesn't begin when the storm ends. It begins when you stop walking through it alone. I couldn't hold back my tears. Neither could Daniel. A young woman standing beside us smiled. "Are you Adam's parents?" "Yes. He talks about you all the time. He says you saved his life." I looked toward the other side of the room where Adam was speaking with classmates. I quietly smiled. "No, we just loved him. The one who saved his life is Jesus." A few minutes later, Adam joined us. "Mom, what do you think?" I wrapped my arms around him. "I think God has given you a gift." He laughed. "I almost threw away every sketch I ever made." "I'm glad you didn't. So am I." Months later, Father Michael invited Adam to share his testimony during a church service focused on hope and healing. The sanctuary was full. People of every age filled the pews. Some came carrying visible burdens. Others carried burdens no one could see. Adam stood at the front holding the same Bible he had once carried into that empty church on the morning we found him. He took a deep breath. "I used to believe Christians weren't supposed to struggle." A quiet silence settled over the room. "I thought if I prayed enough, read enough scripture, or believed hard enough, the sadness would disappear." He paused. I was wrong. He looked around the sanctuary. I learned something much more beautiful. Jesus never promised a life without storms. He promised he would never leave us in the storm. Many people were wiping away tears. I also learned something else. The strongest words I ever spoke weren't, "I'm okay." They were, "I need help." When he finished, people quietly stood to their feet, not because his story was dramatic, because it was honest. After the service, several teenagers approached him. One young man hugged Adam with tears streaming down his face. I thought I was the only one. Adam smiled gently. "No, you're not." Watching that conversation, I realized something extraordinary. The pain that had once nearly destroyed my son was now helping others find hope. Only God could do something like that. A few weeks before Christmas, our family gathered around the same old oak dining table we'd owned since the beginning of our marriage. Nothing about the table had changed. The scratches were still there. The worn corners remained. Yet somehow, it looked different, maybe because we were different. Daniel looked around the room and smiled. "You know what I miss?" "What?" Adam asked. "The old days when you were 5 and believed I could fix anything." Adam laughed. "I still think you can fix a lot." Daniel grinned. "I can't fix Wi-Fi." "I definitely can't fix smartphones." Everyone laughed. Then Adam reached into his backpack. "I have something for both of you." He handed us 2 framed drawings. Mine showed a mother kneeling beside her son's bed, quietly praying while he slept. Across the bottom were handwritten words. She never stopped believing God was listening. I couldn't stop crying. Daniel opened his. It showed a father and son rebuilding an old wooden fence together. Below it were the words, "Real strength is staying." Daniel hugged Adam without saying a word. Sometimes love is too deep for language. As Christmas dinner came to an end, Adam asked if we could pray together. We joined hands around the table. He prayed slowly. "Jesus, thank you for not giving up on me when I wanted to give up on myself. Thank you for giving me parents who chose compassion instead of shame. Thank you for friends who stayed. Thank you for counselors, pastors, doctors, and everyone you used to remind me that asking for help isn't weakness. Most of all, thank you for walking with me even when I couldn't feel you. Amen. There wasn't a dry eye at the table. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found myself standing in the kitchen. The very same kitchen where I had once stared at Adam's forgotten phone. I could almost see that frightened version of myself standing there again. Confused, terrified, wondering whether my family was falling apart. If I could speak to that version of Sandy today, I would gently take her hand and say this: the road ahead will be harder than you can imagine. You will cry more tears than you think are possible. You will ask God questions you never thought you would ask. But don't lose hope, because God often begins his greatest work in the places that look completely broken. I used to think the day I checked my son's phone was the worst day of my life. Now I see it differently. It wasn't the day everything fell apart. It was the day the truth finally came into the light. And where truth meets grace, healing can begin. So if you're listening to my story today and you're carrying a burden you've been hiding, please hear me. You do not have to carry it alone. Talk to someone you trust, reach out to family, speak with a pastor, a counselor, a doctor, or a close friend. There is courage in asking for help. There is hope even when you cannot see it. And there is a Savior whose love is not measured by your strongest days, but who remains faithful even through your weakest ones. My name is Sandy. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a follower of Jesus. And this is the story of how one forgotten phone reminded our family that the darkest secrets lose their power when they're brought into the light, and how God's grace can meet us there, one honest step at a time.